That was the first thing the division commander noticed. Not the torn uniforms, not the missing gear, not even the silence they carried like a second shadow. It was their eyes, dark, hollow, like men who had looked straight into something the rest of the world wasn't meant to see. But before they became a whisper on the battlefield, before they earned the name the Ghost Patrol, they were just 12 American soldiers chosen for a mission nobody wanted. It began in the dense, fog-choked forests of eastern France. Reports came in of a German artillery unit hidden deep behind enemy lines, too deep for bombers to reach, too mobile for scouts to track. That battery had already cost hundreds of American lives, pinning entire regiments in place, stopping offensives cold. Someone had to find it, someone had to destroy it, and someone had to do it quietly, without alerting the German command. So headquarters chose a small reconnaissance squad, young men, tough men, but not special forces, not commandos, just regular soldiers who had survived long enough to be considered reliable. Their orders were simple on paper. Advance 10 miles behind enemy lines, locate the artillery, mark its position, report back. But every man in that tent knew the truth. Missions like this rarely ended with a report. Most ended with a folded flag sent home. Sergeant Hale, the patrol leader, studied the map in silence. The forest ahead was a nightmare. Thick undergrowth, twisting ravines, abandoned villages crawling with enemy scouts. Even in daylight, visibility dropped to a few yards. At night, the fog made it impossible to distinguish a friend from foe. Still, Hale accepted without hesitation. "We leave at dusk," he said. They prepared quickly. Light packs, silenced gear, barely enough rations for 2 days. No radios except one unreliable handset. No heavy weapons. Nothing that would slow them down or make noise. As the sun set behind the shattered tree line, the patrol slipped forward, swallowed by the forest's darkness. Every step felt like stepping deeper into another world, one where sound vanished, where shadows stretched into shapes that didn't make sense, where even the wind seemed to whisper warnings. After only an hour, the front lines were far behind them. After 2, the fog thickened so heavily they could barely see each other. After 3, they realized something was wrong. No birds, no insects, no distant artillery, just silence. Heavy, unnatural, absolute. Hale raised his fist, signaling a halt. The men crouched low, straining to listen. Nothing. Not even their breathing felt like it belonged to them. Then, somewhere ahead, a single echo broke the quiet, soft, metallic, deliberate. A sound no patrol wanted to hear. A rifle bolt being slowly, silently, pulled back. The mission had begun, but they were not the only ones moving in the dark. The metallic click echoed for only a heartbeat, but it froze every man in place. The fog around them suddenly felt alive, thick, shifting, swallowing the trail behind them and hiding whatever waited ahead. Hale raised 2 fingers, signaling his squad to spread out silently, but even their footsteps felt unnaturally loud on the damp forest floor. Private Mills, the youngest in the group, leaned close to Hale. "Could be one of ours," he whispered. Hale didn't look at him. "Nobody from our side is this far in." That was the truth. They were alone. Completely, utterly alone. A faint movement flickered in the fog, so subtle it might have been imagination. A silhouette, a shoulder shifting, the faintest outline of a helmet. Hale tightened his grip on his rifle. "Hold," he whispered. "Don't fire unless fired upon." The patrol lowered their breathing, the forest sinking deeper into stillness. Seconds stretched. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. The fog swallowed the shape entirely. Then a single gunshot shattered the silence. A round snapped past Hale's head, slamming into a tree behind him. The patrol scattered instantly, diving into cover as more shots cracked from somewhere unseen. Muzzles flashed faintly through the white haze, just enough to show direction, never enough to reveal faces. "Ambush!" Hale shouted, crawling behind a fallen log. The Rangers returned fire, blind and controlled. Bullets cut through fog and branches, thudding into unseen targets. The attackers were fast, moving between positions with almost unnatural precision, hitting then fading into the mist before anyone could track them. Mills breathed sharply. "What are these guys? They're too close without making a sound." Hale didn't answer. He was listening to the rhythm of the gunfire, the patterns of movement. Whoever they were fighting, they weren't regular infantry. Their tactics were wrong. Too quiet, too patient, too calculated. A shadow lunged from the fog to Hale's left, rifle raised, bayonet flashing. Hale reacted instantly, firing a burst that dropped the attacker at his feet. But when the body hit the ground, Hale felt a chill press into his bones. The soldier wore no insignia, no division patch, no unit markings, just a plain field gray uniform with its identifiers ripped away. "Scouts," Hale whispered. "Hand-picked, probably sent to guard the artillery." The thought made his stomach tighten. If this was only the outer patrol, the artillery must be close, closer than they'd expected. "Push forward," Hale ordered. "Break contact and move. Staying here gets us killed." The squad moved deeper into the forest, weaving between trees, slipping through fog as bullets snapped behind them. The attackers followed just long enough to keep them off balance, then disappeared as suddenly as they'd appeared. Minutes later, the gunfire faded. The forest went silent again. Too silent. Hale signaled them to regroup in a small hollow. Faces pale, breath shaking, hands trembling around rifles. They were trained for combat, but this wasn't combat as they knew it. This was a hunt, and they weren't the hunters. Corporal Reyes leaned in. "Sarge, we're being herded." Hale nodded grimly. "Yeah, they're pushing us somewhere." Mills swallowed hard. "Where?" Hale looked into the fog ahead, thicker, darker, untouched by wind. "Toward the artillery," he said, "and whatever's guarding it." No one spoke after that. They simply formed up and kept moving. But the forest felt heavier now, the shadows longer, and every step forward felt like walking into the mouth of something waiting to close behind them. The fog thinned just enough for the patrol to see shapes forming ahead, jagged outlines, broken rooftops, the suggestion of chimneys leaning at unnatural angles. Hale slowed his pace, raising a clenched fist. The men froze, squinting through the pale morning haze. "There's a village up there," Reyes whispered. Mills frowned. "But the map shows nothing for miles." "Exactly, and that's what made every man's pulse quicken." They approached cautiously, rifles up, moving one careful step at a time. The trees opened into a clearing, revealing a cluster of stone houses arranged around a small dirt square. Windows shattered, doors hanging crooked, no movement, no sound. It looked abandoned, years abandoned. But the patrol had crossed this region only months earlier. Nothing like this had been here then. Hale's instincts screamed. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. "Spread out, eyes open. No one goes alone," he ordered. They fanned through the empty streets. Mills stepped over a rusted bicycle half buried in mud. Reyes pushed open a door that creaked like it hadn't moved in years. Inside, a wooden table lay on its side. A child's shoe sat in the corner. Dust coated everything, but the footprints in the dirt floor were fresh, very fresh. "Hale!" Reyes whispered sharply, pointing. "Someone's here." Before Hale could respond, a cold gust of wind pushed through the village, carrying with it a faint metallic echo, like distant chains rattling. The men snapped their rifles toward the source, but there was nothing there, only fog drifting between structures like pale smoke. "Stick together," Hale said, voice low. "This place isn't empty." Mills examined a burned-out cart near a well. What happened here? The war wasn't even close to this deep weeks ago. Reyes stepped into the center of the square. Feels like they abandoned it overnight. A sudden thud echoed across the village. Deep, heavy, hollow. The sound of something falling inside a nearby barn. The squad pivoted instantly, rifles aimed. No movement, just silence settling in again, heavier than before. Hale approached the barn door slowly, each step cautious, deliberate. He slid it open with the barrel of his rifle. Inside, ropes hung from the rafters. Broken crates lay scattered across the floor, and in the center of the room, half buried under straw, lay a German helmet with its insignia scratched off. Reyes exhaled. More of those unmarked troops. But Hale wasn't looking at the helmet. He was looking at something else, something carved into the wooden beam above it. Deep scratches, dozens of them. Like someone trapped inside had clawed at the wood until their fingers broke. Mills stepped back, his voice trembling. Maybe we should go around the village. Hale shook his head slowly. No, this is part of it. Whatever's guarding that artillery passed through here. And then they heard it. A voice, soft, weak, calling from somewhere behind the houses. Help, please. Every hair on the back of Hale's neck stood up. The voice didn't sound like a trap. It sounded broken, human, desperate. The men moved toward it, rifles steady but hearts pounding. They turned the corner around a collapsed cottage and froze. A German soldier lay slumped against the wall, uniform torn, face pale as ash, eyes wide with terror. Not fear of them, but something else, something behind them. He lifted a shaking hand, pointing deeper into the forest. Not Germans, he rasped. Turn back. His breath caught. His eyes went empty. He was gone. Mills swallowed hard. Sarge, what did he mean? Hale didn't answer. He couldn't. Because in that moment, the fog behind the village shifted, like something large had moved through it without making a sound. The mission wasn't just dangerous anymore. It was becoming something they had no training for, something far worse than artillery. The forest swallowed them again as they left the abandoned village behind, but something had changed. The silence wasn't just silence anymore. It felt like a presence, watching, waiting, letting them take each step only because it hadn't decided to stop them yet. Hale kept the squad tight, moving in a diamond formation. Every man scanned the tree line, but the fog distorted distance, warping shapes into illusions that dissolved the moment they blinked. Reyes slowed. Sarge, smell that? Hale did. Smoke, not from gunfire, not from burning wood. It was thicker, oilier, like machinery overheated to the point of melting. They followed the smell until the trees opened into a narrow ravine. There, carved into the mud, were deep parallel trenches, tracks, but not tank tracks, not half tracks, not like anything they'd seen the Germans use. The spacing was wrong, too wide, too uneven, as if whatever passed through wasn't meant to move on wheels at all. Mills knelt beside one of the indentations, running his hand across the mud. Whatever made this, it was heavy, really heavy. And recent, Reyes added, still warm. Hale felt a knot tighten in his chest. The reports had mentioned a mobile artillery battery, but this was something else entirely. No artillery piece left tracks like an animal dragging itself through the earth. Stay sharp, Hale whispered. Eyes up, not down. They continued deeper into the ravine. The fog grew denser, pooling like a living thing between the rocks. Branches overhead groaned as if the forest itself were warning them. Corporal Jennings, walking rear guard, suddenly hissed, "Movement behind us." The patrol spun around. Nothing, just fog twisting into shapes too quickly to focus on. Jennings swallowed. I saw something, tall, not human. Fog plays tricks, Hale said. Even he didn't believe his own words. They pressed forward until the ravine ended abruptly at a clearing. On the far side stood a shattered German outpost, sandbags ripped open, crates smashed, steel plates bent outward as if by immense pressure. Reyes approached one of the crushed sandbags, crouching low. "Sarge, these weren't hit by explosives." Hale examined the damage. He knew immediately what Reyes meant. Explosions go inward. This damage pushed outward, like something inside the trench had torn its way free. Jennings pointed to the center of the clearing. "Oh God, what is that?" At first it looked like a pile of debris. Then Hale realized it wasn't debris. It was bodies, German soldiers, dozens of them. All positioned in a circle, weapons untouched, as if they had collapsed simultaneously without firing a single shot. No wounds, no blood, just faces twisted in terror. Mills backed away, voice unsteady. "This isn't artillery. This isn't even war. What could do this?" Hale forced himself to stay calm, though his pulse hammered in his ears. "Doesn't matter what did it. It's ahead of us. And our mission goes ahead too." Even Reyes stared at him like he was crazed. "Sarge, we need to return to the lines and report this. Whatever happened here." A sharp, distant howl cut him off. Not an animal, not a human. Something between. Something wrong. The patrol froze, eyes wide, rifles raised into the fog. Mills whispered, trembling, "Tell me that's wind?" Hale stepped in front of his men, jaw clenched. "No, that's what killed them." The forest fell silent again, deadly, waiting. And Hale knew they were no longer advancing toward the artillery. The artillery was just bait. They were advancing toward whatever guarded it. The howl faded into the tree line, replaced once again by that suffocating silence, the kind that crushes thought and makes every breath feel stolen. Hale motioned the squad into a defensive circle, rifles up, eyes scanning the fog. No one spoke. No one even swallowed too loudly. Then Reyes spotted it, a glint, small, metallic, near a fallen tree. He crouched and brushed aside leaves, revealing a tripwire stretched so thin it looked like a strand of hair. At the end of it, half buried under pine needles, was a German-made flare mine, a trap, a silent alarm. Hale exhaled sharply. They knew someone was coming. Not creatures, not ghosts, enemy scouts, elite ones. Mills stepped closer. "But why set the traps facing inward, Sarge? Toward their own lines?" Hale didn't have an answer, and that scared him more than anything. They advanced slowly, navigating a maze of nearly invisible wires. Whoever laid them had done it with surgical precision. Tripwires at knee height, pressure plates under loose soil, fragmentation traps hidden inside hollowed logs. None of this was standard infantry work. "These are Brandenburgers," Reyes murmured. "German special forces, sabotage units, masters of misdirection." Hale nodded grimly. "Makes sense. A mobile battery guarded by elites." But even Brandenburgers didn't leave entire outposts dead without firing a shot. Something wasn't adding up. The patrol pressed deeper until the fog thinned enough to reveal a set of crude wooden barriers arranged in a semicircle. Behind them, footprints, small clusters of them pressed deep into the mud. Not chaotic, not rushed, disciplined, a firing line, and all of them faced inward. Hale's stomach tightened. They were aiming at something inside their own perimeter. Before anyone could react, a rustling sound snapped through the trees, fast, sharp, closing in. Hale dropped to a knee, rifle up. Reyes swung left. Mills spun right. Shapes emerged from the tree line, silent, low, moving fast. "Contact front," Hale barked. Gunfire erupted instantly, muzzle flashes slicing through the fog. The shapes scattered, ducking behind trees with inhuman quickness. Hale fired again, catching one mid-stride. The figure crumpled, skidding across the leaves. Reyes rushed forward, dragging the body back by the collar. When he rolled it over, the entire squad froze. It was a German soldier, but not a regular one. Camouflage paint smeared across his face, uniform stripped of insignia, pouches empty except for a knife and a single unmarked map. A ghost unit. Recon trained to live unseen, move silently, and kill without being detected. Jennings knelt beside the body. These guys aren't hunting artillery crews. They're hunting us. Hale shook his head. No, they were hunting something before we even got here. More movement echoed through the trees, this time farther away. Not charging, not flanking, retreating. They're withdrawing. Mills's voice trembled. Why would elite scouts attack, then pull back that fast? Hale answered without looking away from the trees. They weren't trying to kill us. He inhaled deeply. They were testing us. The squad felt the weight of those words settle over them. Testing distance, testing reaction time, testing numbers, like cataloging prey. Reyes broke the silence. Sarge, what do we do? Hale looked at the fog pressing in around them, at the ravine behind them, at the unmarked tracks ahead. We complete the mission, he said quietly, because whatever is deeper in these woods, the Germans are afraid of it too. He stood, tightening the strap on his rifle, and that means we're close. The patrol formed up again, silent, tense, determined, and moved deeper into the heart of the forest. Behind them, the fog swallowed their footprints. Ahead of them waited the truth none of them were ready for. The forest thickened until it felt more like a tunnel than open terrain. Branches intertwined overhead, blocking sunlight, forcing the patrol into a twilight world even though it was barely past noon. Every step forward seemed to sink deeper into soil that hadn't been touched by civilians or even regular troops in months. Hale raised a fist. Hold, listen. At first they heard nothing. Then, a faint vibration beneath their boots. Not footsteps, not voices, machinery. Reyes crouched, pressing his ear to the ground. Engines! Slow? Heavy? Could be generators. Hale nodded. Which means we're close. They moved toward the sound, pushing through dense undergrowth until they reached a slope covered in thick moss and twisted roots. It looked like just another hillside, until Jennings brushed aside a curtain of vines. Steel, a door, half buried, reinforced, German-made. Not a simple outpost. This was a bunker entrance camouflaged so well that without the vibration they would have walked right past it. Mills swallowed. This wasn't on any map, Sarge. Exactly, Hale said, which means whatever's inside wasn't meant to be found. Reyes inspected the frame. No explosives, no booby traps. They expected only their own men. Hale motioned for the squad to stack up. Heartbeats quickened. Fingers tightened on triggers. It wasn't the danger, it was the unknown, the shrinking world behind that steel door. The feeling that whatever lay inside was the reason for the missing troops, the traps, the unmarked units. Hale gripped the handle, exhaled, pulled. The hinges groaned softly as cold, stale air drifted out, the smell of diesel, metal, and something else. Something like fear left too long in a closed room. The patrol descended down a narrow concrete corridor lit only by a failing emergency lamp that flickered every few seconds, plunging the hallway into darkness. Their shadows jerked and twisted across the walls, creating shapes that mimicked movement. Jennings whispered, "Feels abandoned." "Then why's the generator still running?" Hale replied. They reached the first chamber. Inside were rows of communication equipment, radios smashed, headsets torn, papers scattered across the floor. Something had happened here, something fast, something chaotic. Reyes lifted one of the papers, squinting in the dim light. It's a log entry, dated 3 days ago. "What does it say?" Mills asked. Reyes hesitated. "We detected movement in the forest, not Allied, not German, ordered all units to..." The rest of the line was torn away. Hale's jaw tightened. "Keep searching." They moved to the next room, larger, colder, and lined with storage crates. Some were sealed, others burst open. Inside were gas masks, field rations, ammunition, and maps. Dozens of maps. Forest terrain, elevation marks, patrol routes, all marked with black circles. Reyes traced the biggest circle with his finger. This bunker, we're dead center of their surveillance grid. Jennings pointed to another map. Sarge, look. Dozens of German positions were crossed out, abandoned, evacuated. Not from Allied pressure, these were miles from any front. Mill's voice cracked. Were they running from us? Or from each other? Hale stared at the maps, the crossed-out outposts, the torn messages, the smashed radios. The pattern was clear. Something pushed them out, Hale said, and they sealed this place after retreating. A sudden metallic slam echoed deeper in the bunker, like a hatch dropping shut. The patrol froze. Movement inside, Jennings whispered. Someone's here. Hale raised his rifle, motioning them into a defensive line. Stay sharp, he said. We're not alone. The echoes faded, but the sense of being watched grew heavier, thicker, like the bunker itself was holding its breath. And somewhere ahead, in the pitch-black corridor, something shifted. Not supernatural, not impossible, just human. Human in the worst possible way. Men who had broken, men who had been left behind, men who were no longer thinking like soldiers. The patrol tightened formation. Whatever waited deeper in the bunker was the key to everything that had happened in this forest. The corridor tightened as they advanced, ceiling dropping low enough that the men had to crouch. Pipes ran along both walls, rattling faintly with every distant thud of machinery. The generator was still running somewhere below, humming with an uneven pulse, like it was struggling to stay alive. Hale raised his palm. Slow, weapons up. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Not winter cold, concrete cold. Cold that lives in places without sunlight. Cold that settles into bone. Reyes scanned ahead with his flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness in shaky arcs. Something metallic gleamed just beyond the next doorway. Footsteps, soft, dragging. The patrol swung their rifles toward the sound. A figure stepped into view, stumbling forward, hands raised weakly. A German soldier, but not like the ones they'd fought outside. This man's uniform hung off him like a loose sack. His beard was long, his eyes hollow, his lips cracked from dehydration. He blinked against the flashlight, flinching as though the light itself hurt. Jennings tensed. Sarge, he's unarmed. Hale motioned to hold fire. Let him speak. The man opened his mouth, but only a rasp came out. He collapsed to his knees, shaking violently. Mills rushed forward, giving him a sip from his canteen. The soldier drank desperately, coughing between gulps. When he finally caught enough breath to speak, his voice broke like old glass. Don't go deeper, he whispered. Hale crouched beside him. How many of you are left? The German shook his head slowly. They're gone. All gone. Reyes stepped forward. Who killed them? American forces? Resistance? Who? The soldier's eyes widened at the question. He looked past them toward the darkness behind the patrol, as if expecting something to emerge. No, he rasped. Not you. Not partisans. It was them. Who is them? Hale pressed. The soldier swallowed painfully. Our own men, the battery crew. They broke. They turned on each other. No orders, no reason, like the forest, got into them. Mills looked horrified. You're saying they went insane? The German nodded weakly. We sealed the bunker, tried to escape, but the fog outside, trap sound. You hear things that aren't there. Footsteps, voices. I think it was the stress, the isolation, the attacks, days without sleep. His breath hitched. It drove them mad. Hale exchanged a grim look with Reyes. Exhaustion, fear, encirclement. Any unit could collapse under those conditions. "Where's the battery now?" Hale asked. The man pointed deeper into the bunker. "Still running, still firing. They kept the guns alive even after losing their minds. They think someone is watching them, someone above." His voice cracked again. "And we locked them in." A loud bang echoed behind a steel door deeper down the corridor. A single heavy blow, then another. The soldier recoiled, shaking violently. "They're still in there," he whispered. "They never stopped." Reyes tightened his grip on his rifle. "Sarge, what do we do with him?" Before Hale could answer, the German grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. "You cannot reason with them," he hissed. "They don't know who they are anymore. They don't know where they are. They only know the guns. They live for the firing orders, orders that never came." A metallic scream tore through the bunker, steel bending under pressure. The German's voice dropped to a trembling breath. "If you open that door, they will kill anything that moves." Hale rose slowly, eyes on the trembling steel far ahead. "We're not opening it," he said. "We're ending whatever's behind it." The German slumped forward, exhausted, relieved, but terrified. The patrol tightened formation. Deep in the bunker, something struck the door again, harder this time. And Hale realized the truth. They weren't dealing with monsters, just broken men turned violent by war. Human beings pushed beyond sanity. But that didn't make them any less dangerous. It made them worse. The pounding on the steel door was getting worse. Each hit shook dust from the ceiling and sent a dull vibration through the concrete floor. Hale's squad stood in the corridor, rifles ready, watching the metal bulge with every impact. Behind that door were the men the Germans had sealed in, the last artillery crew, soldiers who had been left in the bunker too long under too much pressure until something inside them finally snapped. "We open that and they'll rush us," Reyes said quietly. "Then we don't open it," Hale replied. He pointed to a narrow side passage marked with a faded red arrow. "We go around, hit the battery from behind." They moved into the auxiliary corridor, single file, boots echoing softly in the stale air. Old emergency lamps flickered overhead, turning their shadows into jagged shapes on the wall. Somewhere beneath their feet, the generator thumped unevenly, like a tired heart. After a short walk, the passage opened onto a grated overlook. Hale peered through. Below them was the artillery control room. Two big guns ran through the chamber, barrels angled toward the distant front. Electrical panels hummed softly. Shells were stacked in neat rows along the wall, and in the middle of it all stood 4 German artillerymen. They were still alive, but they didn't look like it. Their uniforms were filthy, beards overgrown, eyes glassy and unfocused. One stared at a dead radio, mumbling half-formed fire commands. Another kept loading shells onto a conveyor belt that no longer moved. A third traced circles on a map with a pencil worn down to wood. The fourth simply swayed on his feet, as if sleep and collapse were fighting over him. Reyes whispered, "They're gone, Sarge. Mine's burned out." "Doesn't matter," Hale said. "Those guns are still ready to fire." They climbed down a ladder and spread out through the shadows of the control room. Each man took a position with a clear angle. Hale raised a hand, about to give the signal. That was when the swaying artilleryman suddenly noticed them. His eyes snapped wide, no recognition, no words, just pure animal panic. He screamed. The others reacted instantly, grabbing whatever they could as weapons, wrenches, shell casings, tools. They charged without tactics, but with terrifying strength. The squad opened fire in short, controlled bursts. One gunner slammed into Reyes, swinging a wrench so hard it dented the panel beside his head before dropping to the floor. Another tackled Hale, fingers clawing for his throat until Mills put a single round through the man's shoulder and knocked him off. It was over in seconds. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the machinery and the ragged breathing of the patrol. The 4 artillerymen lay still at their feet, their war finally over. "Reyes," Hale said, chest heaving. "Charges on the guns, now." The squad moved quickly, working by muscle memory. Explosives under the breeches, at the mounts, along the cable runs. The generator thumped again, weaker this time, as if it knew what was coming. When everything was set, Reyes lit the main fuse. "Battery's done," he said. Hale gave the room one last look. Not at the guns, but at the men who had died keeping them alive long after their minds were gone. "Let's get out of this grave," he muttered. They turned and ran for the exit tunnel as the fuse burned down behind them, carrying the last beating heart of the bunker toward its final silence. The fuse burned somewhere behind them, its faint crackle echoing through the concrete hallways. Hale's squad moved fast, boots slamming against the floor as they followed the emergency exit signs back toward the upper levels. Every man felt the bunker tightening around them, as if the walls themselves urged them to leave before the blast tore everything apart. "Move! Move!" Hale shouted, pushing the line forward. A deep metallic groan vibrated through the tunnels, the kind of sound a heavy structure makes right before it gives way. Dust rained from the ceiling. Pipes shook. Lights flickered violently, then dimmed. Reyes glanced back. Fuses burning faster than expected. "It's the airflow," Jennings said. "This whole place is a wind tunnel." They rounded a corner and skidded to a stop. Voices, German voices, close. Hale raised a fist. "Halt." Down the corridor, silhouetted by a faint lantern glow, moved a squad of German Brandenburgers, elite special forces, silent, focused, armed. They weren't panicked like the artillery crew. These were professionals, the kind who could track a man by a broken twig, and they were headed straight toward the control room Hale's team had just sabotaged. If they reached the battery before the explosion, it wouldn't matter who stopped them. Everyone inside would be gone. Reyes whispered, "Sarge, if they spot us—" "They won't," Hale said. "We take the side passage." He pointed to a narrow maintenance shaft on the right, barely wide enough for a man with gear. One by one, the squad squeezed inside, crouching low as they crawled through the tight metal tunnel. The sound of German boots and muffled orders passed just a few feet from their position. Jennings muttered, "If they shine a light in here." "Quiet," Hale breathed. The Germans marched past without noticing them. A minute later, their footsteps faded, and then a thunderous boom shook the bunker. The explosion rippled through the walls like a shockwave, hot air blasting through vents and panels. The men dropped flat as dust and debris rained from above. Somewhere in the darkness behind them, the artillery chamber collapsed in on itself, taking the guns, and anyone near them, into a crater of fire and steel. The tunnel lights went black. Only emergency beacons remained, glowing a faint red. "We need to get out before this whole place falls," Hale said. They crawled until the maintenance shaft opened into a stairwell leading upward. The air grew colder again as they climbed, but fresher, cleaner, a sign they were close to the surface. Halfway up the stairs, Mills suddenly stopped. "Sarge, listen." Hale froze, faint movement above. Not marching, not coordinated, patrols. German guards positioned at the exit. Of course the enemy would guard the upper levels. Anyone escaping the bunker would have to pass through them. Reyes leaned close. "We're boxed in." "No," Hale whispered. "We push through. We're not dying underground." He signaled the men into position, 2 on each side of the stairwell door, Mills ready on the hinge, Reyes on the opposite corner. Hale counted down silently with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. Mills kicked the door open. Gunfire erupted instantly, short, precise bursts. Dust flew from the stone archway. 2 Germans went down before they could even turn. Another fired from behind a crate, bullets whipping past Hale's shoulder. Jennings put him down with a quick double tap. Silence. The exit chamber was secure. Reyes heaved the final hatch open and cold forest air washed over them like freedom itself. Daylight filtered through the trees. Birds returned to the air. The nightmare of the bunker loosened its grip. Hale took one last look back at the stairwell. "Battery's gone," he said quietly. "Whatever haunted this place ends here." But when they stepped outside, they saw something that made everyone stop. Fresh footprints, German, multiple, circling the exit. And then Reyes spoke the words no one wanted to hear. "We're not safe yet, Sarge. They're hunting us." Hale tightened his grip on his rifle, then let them come. The forest felt different once they stepped out of the bunker. Quieter, but not safer. Hale sensed it instantly. The way the air shifted, the way the trees seemed to close in, the way every sound felt too close. The Germans hadn't abandoned the hunt. They had simply moved it above ground. Reyes crouched beside the fresh footprints circling the exit hatch. 3, maybe 4 men, light scouts. They saw the explosion and waited for survivors. "Then they know we're alive," Jennings said. Hale nodded. "And they're calling in more." He didn't need to say what that meant. They were deep behind enemy lines, outnumbered, low on ammunition, and exhausted after hours inside a collapsing bunker. Their only advantage now was that the forest was thick, and they still had their discipline. "Single file," Hale ordered. "We move fast, no noise, no talking unless necessary." The squad slipped into the tree line, becoming shapes among the branches. Every snapped twig sounded like a gunshot. Every distant rustle pulled their triggers tighter. The forest, once an obstacle, was now their shield, but the Germans were close, too close. Half an hour into the escape, Mills held up a fist. "Voices," he whispered. They dropped instantly, pressing into the ground. Through the brush, they saw 2 German scouts walking parallel to their route, sweeping the forest with slow, deliberate movements, searching, listening. One wrong step and a firefight would erupt. Hale signaled the squad to freeze, not breathe, not blink. The scouts paused, eyes scanning the brush. Then one pointed toward the bunker trail, muttered something, and the pair moved off. Jennings exhaled shakily. "We're ghosts out here, too." "No," Hale said. "Ghosts don't get tired." The men pushed on. Hours blurred together. The sun dipped lower. Hunger clawed at them. Their legs shook. But every man kept moving, following Hale's compass and instinct. By late afternoon, they reached a rocky rise overlooking the valley, and below it, far in the distance, they saw friendly lines, American positions, Allied flags, safety. Jennings laughed under his breath. "We can make that." Reyes scanned the ridge behind them. "If the scouts don't catch us first." As if summoned by the words, a single rifle shot cracked through the trees. Mills dove behind a stump as the bullet smashed into the rock beside him. "Contact rear!" Hale shouted. German scouts emerged from the brush, 3 of them fast and precise. The patrol returned fire, short controlled bursts. One scout fell. The others darted behind cover. "Go!" Hale barked. "Down the slope! Move now!" The squad scrambled downhill, dirt sliding under their boots. Bullets tore through branches overhead. Reyes fired backward to keep the Germans pinned. Jennings took a grazing hit to the arm but kept running, teeth clenched. The forest thinned. Open ground appeared ahead. Freedom, but also exposure. Hale made the call. "Sprint straight to our lines." They broke cover and ran across the clearing, lungs burning, legs threatening to give out. German fire snapped at their heels. Exhaustion faded into pure survival. The Americans on the far ridge spotted them and opened covering fire, forcing the scouts to retreat back into the trees. Hale's squad crossed into friendly lines and collapsed behind sandbags. Medics rushed over. Officers shouted orders. But everything around them blurred into background noise. They had made it. Reyes sat against a crate, breathing hard. Sarge, what do we tell them? About the bunker? About those men? Hale looked toward the forest, silent again, hiding everything they had survived. We tell them the truth, he said quietly, but not the whole truth. Jennings frowned. Why not? Because some things out there, Hale paused, choosing the words carefully, aren't enemy strategies or military secrets. They're just what happens when men are pushed too far from help, for too long. He wiped the dirt from his face, his hand trembling slightly. No report can explain that. For a moment, the squad sat in silence, listening to the distant rumble of artillery far away from this cursed place. The weight of what they'd seen, what they'd survived, settled over them like a second skin. Then Mills whispered, Sarge, are we done? Hale nodded slowly. Yeah, mission accomplished. But as the medics led them toward the aid station, one final thought burned quietly in the back of Hale's mind. They had gone behind enemy lines to find a hidden artillery battery. But what they found instead was the edge of what soldiers could endure before breaking. And that, more than any bunker or gun, was the part of the mission that would haunt them forever.